A little bit of news this week. Phil Salt will keep wicket ahead of Joss Buttler, who returns for the T20s. Buttler will, the skipper, will bat only. But also the central contracts, the Test central contracts were announced in the last 7 days or so, and one of the names missing was Ben Foakes. So he has not been given a central contract. And we also know that Jamie Smith, who came in ahead of his Surrey teammate and played very well during the summer, is going to miss the New Zealand series coming up. So it means that Jordan Cox will keep wicket in New Zealand. So the question for you both, and I'll start with you, Bumble, is where does that leave the game in regard to wicket keepers, especially when you factor in the fact that the coach was a wicket keeper himself, and yet seems to have prioritised the batting even more than what we've seen possibly in the last few years.
You got the two best blokes here to talk about wicket keeping, Harmison and myself, and we're talking about McCullum. When you think about McCullum, he also got rid of the gloves from time to time. He would come back as a wicket keeper, and so you're talking really about the balance of the side. There will be the purists who say you've always got to play your best wicket keeper. Interesting, an opening bowler here. I work with an exceptional opening bowler, world class Michael Holding, who was quite adamant that you need your best wicket keeper. I'm not in that camp. I think you need to balance the side, and the complications that you've just described there with England, there are that many complications. Jamie Smith missing in New Zealand, birth of a child, that never used to happen, but it's the modern way. I've got 4 kids and was told that this is nothing to do with you, out you go. For a week, you keep out the way. It's totally different now. Ben Cox will keep wicket, who doesn't keep wicket. I can't see that he keeps wicket anywhere, but he's going to have a go. Johnny Bairstow's got a central contract and doing nothing, and so it's a mix that's complicated. But with a coach's hat on, I'll say that always I'm looking to balance the side, and you might not have your best wicket keeper because the rest of the team isn't good enough.
You're a fast bowler, or a former fast bowler, Harmy. Did you always just want the best keeper behind the stumps?
No.
Bearing in mind, Alex Stewart, who was a player under you, Bumble, wasn't necessarily the best keeper, was he?
No, I think it's like anything in life, you can't have everything. So you'd want the best keeper, you want the best player for your team, and you want the best batter. So I agree. I think the last bit that you've just said there about the side being good enough, and if your top 6 isn't good enough, you'll go with the best batter, keeper. I think there's an element in that. When you look at 2 or 3 of the England players, I mean, Kevin Peterson was on social media recently of what Ricky Ponting said. You know, if you average 35 in Test cricket, or in first-class cricket, your mum and dad bought you a basketball and you had to go and play that. And but the modern day average is coming down for the top 6. So I think there is an element of not good enough, so we have to have the best batter that keeps. And I don't know about you, Bumble, on this one, but having watched Jamie Smith throughout the summer, I actually think he's a good wicketkeeper. I'm
exactly the same about Alex Stewart, who you've mentioned. Very adequate, no frills, didn't miss the ball, 8,000 Test match runs. So there's your balance. I'm going to think about the Ashes of yesteryear. I worked with Shane Warne also. Adam Gilchrist was nowhere near the best wicketkeeper in Australia. Nowhere near. And what a world-class player he was.
He wasn't very... but when he come out at number 7 as a bowler, I mean...
There you go.
I'd have taken an average wicketkeeper... I mean, a good wicketkeeper every time, an average batter. But I think this... I don't know about you, Bumble, and John, you watch England all the time. I look at it, this conversation's come more and more because... Let's be fair, Johnny Bairstow was injured during the Ashes. We picked a wicketkeeper in the Ashes who was nowhere near fit to keep wicket. Now, if Johnny Bairstow hadn't had the golf injury, I don't think the wicketkeeper magnifying how difference between Ben Foakes and everybody else, I don't think we'd be having that conversation. Because I don't think it would have been magnified as how Johnny Bairstow wasn't up to that Ashes because he wasn't fit. He simply wasn't fit enough to keep wicket. But because, again, we'll come back to the fact that England, probably top 6, wasn't good enough that they had to find a place for Bairstow, and they ended up giving him the gloves.
And he'd be desperate, unbelievably desperate to play. And when you look at what he did, Johnny Bairstow, from Test match cricket, 12 Test match centuries. 12 Test match centuries. But he's he now, Johnny Bairstow? 33, 34 maybe. And I've seen England have got a problem, number 3, big time. In Test match cricket we're talking, they need a number 3. And this on social media, James Vince has been bandied about. Now he's going to be 34 this coming summer.
In trying to answer the potential number 3 problem that England do have, although they will not admit that they do, are they just foregoing the wicketkeeper position? Because it seems like Jordan Cox is in the side. If he scores a lot of runs, then maybe he's going to put pressure on Ollie Pope. In terms of the wicket-keeping position, now, bearing in mind, when Matt Pryor came into the Test side, there were criticisms about him as well.
He got dropped, didn't he?
He did get dropped, and he had to come back again.
I was at the other end batting with him in goal when Stuart's debut, when he got 70. I mean, he was out on his feet. You were probably commentating Bumble. And back in the studio, right at the end of the day, he dropped 2 catches off Ryan Sidebottom, and it was the Bob Willis, Dyer, Pryor, and Matt got dropped off the back of that.
So that was about 2007.
That was 2008. Was it 2007? 2008.
It would have been 7.
Yeah. But he come back a better character and a better player and a better wicketkeeper.
Fitter.
Yeah. That was the key.
And Alex Stewart became a better wicketkeeper as he went on as well, didn't he?
He was absolutely fine, Alex Stewart. Captained the side as well. Got a great brain, great astute cricket brain, and a cricket man, very, very thorough. But you've got Jack Russell as well. I'm a great mate of Jack's. He's a fabulous bloke, Jack. Wonderful wicketkeeper. By and large, the rest of the team wasn't good enough to have Jack in.
One of the elements of wicket-keeping, which I don't know gets talked about quite as much, is the mental side of the game. And I've been quite interested in Jamie Smith this summer because, I mean, if you think he's been keeping well, it's good enough for me. But what effect does it have on him in terms of his batting returns? You know, it's just being in that position, and he's a new player. You know, he's making his debut. He's playing in an in a position of the field that he's not used to, and he's being asked to bat. That again, when you fast forward to an Ashes campaign or India during the summer, that must surely have an effect on you as series go on.
Well, it probably does. I mean, you'd need a wicket-keeper to answer that, but there's an opportunity there, and I think Smith has been fabulous for England. And the selectors, they don't take punts with players. They don't. This Jacob Bethel that we're seeing now, 21 years of age, he's good enough to play, and he'll only get better by playing. Now, I haven't seen anything in Cox, but I'm not going to criticise because I'll back these selectors or McCullum and Stokes. That's the man. And I'll go right the way back to Duncan Fletcher, with a lad who was sort of in the doldrums, and he'd been in England under 19s captain, who I had him out in the West Indies. Marcus Trescothick goes back to Somerset. They use him as a first change bowler and bat him at number 8. Duncan Fletcher, as coach of Glamorgan, sees him, becomes England coach. He got 30. We'll have him in. And he's a fabulous player. They're not taking a punt. These are cricket brains. You look at Harmison. When he's playing at Durham, the size of him, the awkwardness, the pace, might be a bit wayward, the pace at 6'6", will have him in. I'm not looking at a shed load of stats and he's got to be averaging this and that. If you've got a cricket brain, you'll back the player, you'll look at the player. Now, I'm not going to criticise Cox, but I haven't seen him do anything. But plenty of people have.
And to want to finish on Smith, the reason why he was brought in, and I think we could see this very, very soon, a bit like what you had with Alex Stewart and Andrew Flintoff. It wouldn't surprise me, by the time the Ashes comes round in Australia, why Smith came in, why Ben identified, and what the role he wanted that, and he didn't think Ben Foakes could do, was to bat with a tail, and bat with a top order, but bat with a tail, and take the game away from the opposition, Adam Gilchrist style. It would not surprise me by the time we turn up to Perth, first Test match in Australia, that Jamie Smith's bat 6 and Ben Stokes bat 7. I really think that, because there's a lot of talk about Ben Stokes batting at number 3, but I think the more and more you look at Stokes' body now, he's just done his hamstring, running a single. I think England need him as an all-rounder, and if he puts a little bit more pressure on his body throughout the summer, they're going to have to look after him. And England might, because of the way Smith performs, Smith might end up finding himself at 6, and a lot of people want Ben Stokes to go to number 3. I think it'll go the other way, and I think Ben Stokes will be the one that marshals the tail and is the aggressor, because that's what he's looking for from that role in his team, because Smith is adequate enough and good enough as a batter to bat number 6.
And if Stokes is at 7, is he good enough or fit enough to bowl? Obviously he's good enough. Is he fit enough to bowl? And that's the role that they're looking for. And you talk about Ben Foakes not being a central contract. He was a passive wicketkeeper. He's a lovely wicketkeeper. It melts into the gloves, as they would say. But if you're a passive keeper at 7, there's nothing happening 8, 9, 10, 11. You just fade away. You've got to have an aggressive player, as you've seen through the history. You need an aggressive player at 7, modern history.